welcome back to this special episode of Nile Cruise, coming to you from the location of the construction site of the Grand Egyptian Museum at the Giza Plateau. And joining me right now is the General Director and Supervisor of the Grand Egyptian Museum, Dr. Tarek Tawfiq. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Welcome. Well, this is great. This is a magnificent construction. Would you tell us more about what has been accomplished so far?
Well, we can see in the background the construction works have advanced very much. We have finished now over 80% of the concrete works of the whole project. More than 75% of the roof has already been accomplished. Two of the main galleries, the Tutankhamun galleries, have already been roofed. So work is advancing very quickly. Also, the landscape in front of the museum is already starting to take shape. So we are really approaching the final stages in the construction of this great project.
Now there are two dates set. One is May 2018 and one is trying to press it to this year, the end of this year, for a partial inauguration. From your point of view, as you're seeing the work, how do you see it and what's the plan for the inauguration?
Well, the aim was to have a partial opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum in May 2018. As the political leadership of the country is encouraging the project very much, and there are a lot of facilities for the project, we are trying to beat this date, and I think that we will be able to have an opening then May 2018.
The primary budget for this museum was 800 million, but it rose to 1.1 billion. And I heard that you got funding from Japan worth 451 million. Is that true? And would you tell us more?
The amounts that you have mentioned are correct. The original contract for the project was approximately 800 million. And of course, because of the rising prices of materials, it had reached about 1.1 billion US dollars. But yet we are working on value engineering, so we are trying to reach an amount of about 1 billion, which would be rather an appropriate amount for such a huge project. Japan had helped with a loan of about 300 million US dollars. And we are continuing in our negotiations with Japan to help us in the continuous funding of the project. But right now the funding is going very well, and the project is secure to be funded until its end.
Now, what's the role of JICA, the Japanese International Cooperation Association? What's the role of it in that project?
The JICA has a crucial role of monitoring the work, as they are the ones who are handling the loan that Japan had given to Egypt of approximately 300 million US dollars. So they monitor the work being done and the way this loan is being spent. On the other hand, JICA has provided Egypt with a very successful training program for our conservators and for our staff in the museum. So they are receiving training in Egypt and in Japan, which is a very important step in the capacity building of the staff of this world-class museum.
Now I'm quite curious, the area we're sitting in, like, is this the facade or is this the back of the museum, behind to my left-hand side?
We are sitting in front of the main facade of the Grand Egyptian Museum. The big opening that we can see in the middle, this will be the atrium, the entrance to the Grand Egyptian Museum, and the part right to our right, this will be the museum. The galleries will be in the floor of the museum. A total roofed exhibition space of about 60,000 square meters. This makes this museum the biggest museum in the world, displaying artifacts of only one civilization, the ancient Egyptian civilization.
Now would you tell us about how many floors and the terms of the displays? Like, would it be chronological? Would it be according to artifacts? Tell us more about it, please, Doctor.
There are three main parts of the Grand Egyptian Museum. The first part will be the atrium, the entrance, and a grand staircase taking you to the third floor, which will take you to the galleries. And upon ascending this grand staircase, the visitor will be passing by approximately 100 huge artifacts, royal statues, architectural elements, taking him until a 25-meter high glass facade overlooking the pyramids of Giza. And by standing in front of the pyramids of Giza, the pyramids of Giza actually become a star inside the museum. Then the visitor has the chance either to go right, then he will enter the two big galleries of King Tutankhamun, which are about 7,000 square meters in size, which for the first time will display the complete objects that were found inside the tomb of Tutankhamun, which are exceeding 5,000 objects. Just to have a comparison, what was displayed at the Cairo Museum at Tahrir until now was just about a third of this number. So this will be a fantastic chance to see for the first time the complete inventory of the tomb of King Tutankhamun. On the other side, there will be the chronological galleries taking you from prehistory until the Greco-Roman period. And there the objects will be dealing with the identity of this museum, which is the ancient Egyptian state, kingship, and eternity. So here for the first time, we are not only dealing with objects, but we are dealing also with the ideas of the ancient Egyptian, with their beliefs, and how the relation used to be between people and kings, people and ancient Egyptian gods. What were the reasons for the magnificent development of the ancient Egyptian civilization, and how these fantastic antiquities came into being.
Now, Doctor, I've interviewed you before on another program on RTV International, and you told me that actually there were a lot of talks and deliberations about which pieces will remain and which pieces will be taken to the Grand Egyptian Museum. And actually, would you tell me more, which was the hardest pieces that you really had to struggle for to be able to convince the committee to bring it to the Grand Egyptian Museum?
There was the complete group of objects of Queen Hetep. And there I really fought and insisted that they must be part of the Grand Egyptian Museum, because the collection of Queen Hetep will be overlooking the place of discovery. So the objects of Queen Hetep were discovered in a shaft beside the pyramid of her son, King Khufu. And you will be, from the point of display, be able to overlook exactly this location. So this was a so emotional connection that I insisted that this collection must be part of the Grand Egyptian Museum.
what I heard also was that King Zosa will have more artifacts, because for him we have his statue at the first hall of the Egyptian Museum of Antiquities, and few pieces there, bits and pieces there, like the faience wall is in a totally different location. And I heard that there'll be more artifacts brought here and they'll be conserved and displayed. Is that true? And would you tell us more?
King Josa is a king whose time produced very diverse objects. Mm-hmm. And some of the objects that have not been highlighted before are huge alabaster vases and huge vessels from the time of King Josa that were part of the fantastic system of tunnels that were beneath the step pyramid. Mm-hmm. So they would be highlighted in the Grand Egyptian Museum, giving new, very interesting information mm-hmm. about this system and what it meant and what these vessels meant being buried there beneath the step pyramid, the first pyramid of the Egyptian history.
I'd like to divert from the Grand Egyptian Museum for one question, and it's because you were part of the restoration team of the mask of King Tutankhamun. And that's a point that we haven't discussed before, and I'd like you to tell us about that, being part of the restoration of the mask and the discovery, because especially that mask will be displayed here. Would you tell us more about it and the revelation of how they fastened the beard?
The unfortunate incident when the beard of the mask of King Tutankhamun became disconnected. Mm-hmm. In this unfortunate incident, there was some positive aspect as well, because I had the privilege of being the Egyptian head of this committee that was formed for the restoration of the mask, and we took this task very seriously, and every step was discussed in detail. And the first step was to clean the beard itself and to clean the remains of the false attempt of restoration that was done. In cleaning the beard, it was discovered that it was not only one solid part, but that it consisted of an inner tube that was directly attached to the mask, and then the beard was just slipped over this inner tube. This was actually a new discovery that was not known in this way before. It taught us a lot about the technique that was used to make this mask. The whole operation gave us a chance of rediscovering the mask of Tutankhamun, restudying all the aspects of this mask, all the material that was used. It gave us a lot of new information about the way this mask was produced. All of this information will be part of the new display at the Grand Egyptian Museum.
Dr. Tarek, we have more to discuss with you, but first let's have this quick break and we'll be back to continue my interview with Dr. Tawfiq, the General Director and Supervisor of the Grand Egyptian Museum. Welcome back to Nile Cruise, coming to you from the construction site of the Grand Egyptian Museum. The Grand Egyptian Museum is expected to be able to deliver or receive around 8 million visitors annually once it's fully constructed. Also, it's expected to house around 100,000 monuments, 50,000 on display and 50,000 in storage, but there'll be temporary exhibitions for them. And to talk more about that mega project, I'm continuing my interview with Dr. Tawfiq, the General Director as well as supervisor of it. Welcome back. And now I'd like to ask about we've talked about the chronology of the museum and the setup of it, but I also heard that there'll be a special section for children, a children's museum. Would you tell us more about that?
The Children's Museum, we have changed the name of it into the Egyptological Adventure, in order for it not to be only for a young age, but in order to serve children and young people of all different ages, and also to serve families with children and grandparents with their grandchildren. It will be a fantastic experience for the whole family. Children will have the chance there to attend courses, talking, for instance, about ancient Egyptian sculpture, where they can actually do something with their hands. They can have a hands-on experience in sculpturing, in writing hieroglyphs, in making vases out of clay. So they will learn in a joyful way how life used to be in ancient Egypt. This is one of our main tasks, to inform the young generations about ancient Egypt with the language of their time, which is computer games and interactive stations, and at the same time also with hand-on experiences, teach them how the ancient Egyptian history evolved, how crafts evolved in ancient Egypt, how writing evolved. So through all of these very rich offers that will be offered by the programs, the educational programs of the Grand Egyptian Museum, there will be the chance for children, for youngsters, and also for elderly people to learn about ancient Egypt in a joyful and informative way.
Also, you have the biggest conservation department in terms of, it's the first to be attached to a museum in Egypt, and I think it's quite big considered the international standards. So would you tell us about it, please?
Right now, the Conservation Center of the Grand Egyptian Museum is the biggest in the world in size. We are aiming for it also to be one of the most advanced and one of the best in the world. We most certainly have the capable staff to reach this aim, and we are constantly working on training them, on giving them most recent means for work, sending them to international conferences, and the restoration work of the 100,000 objects that you have mentioned is done mainly by Egyptian conservators and restorers. So they are doing a fantastic job, something that all Egypt can be proud about, and they are doing it according to the most up-to-date international standards.
Well, Doctor, I'd like also to ask you about not only the conservation, but also the most interesting artifact, especially that of Ramses II. The statue of Ramses II has been here since its transportation. I think that was in 2006. Now, what's the condition of it? What's the plan for it? Have you done any restoration work on it?
The statue of King Ramses II has been standing under the sky and in the free air all of its life. So this means exceeding 3,500 years.
Yes.
Right now it's in a very good state. Some restoration and cleaning works have been done. We are preparing for it to be moved to its final display location, which will be at the entrance of the atrium of the museum. So this 14-meter high statue of King Ramses II, which used to be in front of the Cairo train station, will, once the museum opens, welcome the guests coming to the Grand Egyptian Museum. The final restoration and cleaning works will be done once the statue has reached its final location.
Finally, I'd like to ask you about the training, because of archaeology, we don't have a museology department. There is the ancient Egyptian, the Islamic, the Coptic, the restoration. And I heard that recently only Helwan University opened a museology department for the postgraduates, but it's recently, like a year or two. Now, what do you do? Like, did you get special training from abroad? How did you train them? And what about that experience of museology for even yourself as an Egyptologist?
Of course, museology depends a lot on experience and on having the chance to see a lot of museums, to experience the good and bad sides of display. I had the chance throughout my life, and especially after I became the General Director of the Grand Egyptian Museum, to visit a lot of museums, also in the company of directors, and I got inspired for the Grand Egyptian Museum. At the same time, the Faculty of Tourism of the Helwan University must be congratulated for bringing into life a diploma or a master of museology. Also, the Cairo University has a diploma in this field. But as we are in the nick of time, the staff that you already have, they are being sent abroad. They have courses here in Egypt by specialists in order to prepare them for the partial opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum. But we are constantly working on our staff, and the new staff that will be added to the staff will surely be more prepared for museological work up to international standards.
Dr. Tarek Tawfiq, the General Director and Supervisor of the Grand Egyptian Museum, thank you very much for this interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your interest.
Well, and now it's time to end this particular segment, but we'll be continuing with more about the Grand Egyptian Museum. But first, let's have a look at Cruise Online with the latest hits and most popular on the social media. And you'll be in the rest of the episode accompanied by my colleagues Sharif Al-Touni and Hela Al-Hamalawi, who'll continue the episode with you. So enjoy Cruise Online.